When we begin to understand biblical prophecy, what's about to happen next is going to affect the whole planet Earth. We lost our land, our culture, and our identity. There is a great awakening amongst the scattered tribes, and now we must return to the covenant of our forefathers. The Father chose out of all nations the nation of Israel. Okay, shalom, shalom, everybody. Welcome again to Awakening Ministries, and my name is Brother Kasada Bar from the Awakening Ministries, and I want to thank you once again for taking time out of your busy schedule, as always, to join me here this morning on a lesson I entitled The Return of Mashiyach. Okay, The Return of Mashiyach is the title of the show. But before we get started, let's go ahead and do like we always do. Let's do the Father's Prayer in Hebrew. Then we'll do it in English, and then we'll go ahead and get the ball rolling. Abinu, Shabbat Shamayim, Yit Kudas Shemka, Oyit Barak Melkutka, Retsumka Yahiye Ishui. Ba Shamayim, U Ba Aretz, Ut At Ayin, Latminu Tamadit, Umakulanu, Kata'atenu, Ka'asher Anaknu, Muk Kalim, U Al Tabi Anu Layede, Nasayon, U Sharmanu Makal Ra, all the same to the Father through his Son, Yahushua Mashiyach. Okay, now we're going to do it in English. All right, we're going to do it in English. Our Father which art in heaven, set apart be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Father, we pray that you give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us, Father, from all that is evil. For thine is the kingdom, and all esteem belongs to the Father. And we thank you, Father, for sending your Son, Yahushua Mashiyach, who was and is that atoning sacrifice for the nation of Israel. Father, we thank you for all of the great prophets, all of the great leaders, Father, that you sent, pleading, begging, basically, for us to return into the covenant that was made at Mount Sinai. And Father, we are forever in your debt, and we thank you once again for all of the messengers, all of the divine ones that you sent to return us back to the covenant. All right. So, let's do the next screen. Let's see. Move screen down. Hold on 1 second here, Ms. Bakar. Okay. All right. My apologies for the slight delay there. All right. We should have all clear. And once again, the title of today's show is called The Return of the Mashiyach. And I have a question mark there. My question mark was left out. I have a question mark there. And the reason why I decided to do this show here, Mr. McCall, is because once again, I believe that we're living in some very critical times. And a lot of us want to know exactly how far away or how close are we to expect a change. So once again, how far away or how close are we to seeing a change? We have some only Old Testament believers. We have some that are both Old and New Testament believers. Me personally, I am a both Old and New Testament believer. And what seems to be the controversy is, how is a person looking at the New Testament? Especially when we begin to look at types and shadows. And these types and shadows can be found in the Old Testament. So when we get to the first century, the one who I call the Mashiyach, when he comes, is he fulfilling the types and the shadows that are listed in the Old Testament? That becomes the major question when we begin to look at the return of the Mashiyach. Now, that word Mashiyach is also very important. It's very interesting because almost every religion is looking for a Mashiyach, a redeemer, a anointed one. Like take, for example, in Judaism, the Messiah or Mashiyach is a future Jewish king from the line of David who will redeem the Jewish people and humanity. Now, Christianity has a redeemer that they're also looking for. And once again, in Christianity, but he's more often called Jesus, and Jesus is considered the Messiah and the Christ, the Savior of humanity. But notice now with the Yahudims or Judaism, we don't teach that there came an end to Israel as a people in 70 AD. We teach that Israel became a scattered people at 70 AD, where Christianity now has a different definition where they're talking about the Savior of humanity. And I don't have an issue with that because scriptures do teach that the nation of Israel was given a responsibility to be a light to the nations. So it is not exclusive or exclusively to the nation of Israel because they have a responsibility. And once again, that responsibility was to be a light for or to the nations. Then we have Islam, who also recognizes Jesus or Isa in Arabic. And Jesus is considered a prophet and the Messiah of the Jewish people who will return in the end time as the Mahdi. All right. We have the religion called Zoroastrianism. And with Zoroastrianism, they're also looking for a future redeemer, a anointed one who is also supposed to come and restore righteousness back to the earth. And that individual that they're expecting goes by the name of Saoshyant, spelled Saoshhyant. Buddhism, they're also expecting a redeemer, a righteous one to restore righteousness back to the earth. And that individual goes by the name of the Maitreya. And Buddha is believed to be the next Buddha, or the Maitreya Buddha is believed to be the next Buddha after Shakyamuni, and will bring about a golden age. And then we have Hinduism, and Kalki is the 10th and final avatar of Vishnu, who who would end the age of Kali and restore righteousness. So as we see, Mishpachah, everyone is expecting a redeemer, a righteous one, to bring the world out of darkness and into the marvelous light again. All right. And we see now that the Mashiyach was the light of the world. And if the Mashiyach was the light of the world, as we have in the book of John, so if the Mashiyach is the light of the world, then obviously prior to him coming, the world was in darkness. So once again, Mishpachah, the return of the Mashiyach, and I have a question mark. So again, like I do in all of the classes that I do, I want to always greet the family in peace and shalom. I pray all is well. And the purpose of this presentation is to solidify my position on the return of the Just One, who is known by many different names: Yahushua Ha'Mashiach, Yeshua, Christ, Yahushua, just to name a few. One of the most confusing arguments today is on the redemptive role of the Mashiyach. Okay, so what is the responsibility of the Mashiyach? What is the responsibility of the righteous one to actually restore righteousness back to the planet Earth again? My argument is that this virus has gone viral. All right. Once again, this virus has gone viral, meaning now is that the whole body is sick. The whole head is out of function. It's not operating properly. And I don't personally believe that mankind left unattended can bring about the righteousness that we see in the book of Genesis, where everything was good after the 7 day or the 6 days of creation, where we have the first day, everything is Tomiyot, second day, or the first 1,000 years, the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, everything was classified as good. We are now at the stage where the cancer once again has affected the whole body. And the only way that there can be a cure for all of this, where there has to be a doctor. A doctor needs to come on the scene, diagnose the problem, give a prognosis, then a diagnosis. Then look at what would be or what should be the end results after we go through these stages: the diagnosis, the prognosis. Okay, again, the diagnosis, then the prognosis, and seeing how this whole thing can be resolved. So understanding the redemptive role of the Mashiyach during the first century and the expectancy now of a just one in the near future. Now consider the word teshuvah, which means return to the sovereign. So all of this now is about reconnecting back to the Father, because at this particular junction in the world today, I believe that there's a disconnect. And so that word teshuvah is very important, which means to return to the sovereign. It also means to answer a question, which I found very interesting. So the word teshuvah also means to answer a question. So are there still questions that need to be answered? Because right about now, there is no cohesiveness with anything. This person believes this, that person believes that. The feast days are this way. The calendar is this way. This is the right way that you worship the Father. No, this is the right way to worship the Father. So right now, I believe that there's still a lot of confusion. And there still needs to be some answers to these questions so that we can actually come together and live this righteous lifestyle that the scriptures is telling us that we should be living. So once again, are there still unresolved understandings of biblical text? I believe that they are. Where are we on the prophetic timeline on Daniel's vision, which I believe is key? If we can get a good handle on what is going on in the book of Daniel, the 2nd chapter, the 7th, 8th, 9th, and the 10th, I believe that if we can get a real good stronghold on that, I believe that it would answer a whole lot of questions and give us an idea on whether or not this Redeemer that we're looking to come, is it in the near future or something to happen in the distant future? I mean, way down the line from now. Meaning now, is there still a whole lot more to come? Some believe that the Mashiyach that came during the 1st century was the last and final time of a Redeemer, and there will not be a physical appearance of a Redeemer to get man out of this present situation. They believe, which are preterists, they believe that the foundation's already been set. There's nothing else to do, nor the Bible prophecies to be fulfilled, and that's pretty much about it. All right, and me personally, I totally reject that idea. Now, looking at this timeline, the way that I'm looking at the timeline is this way. We have Babylon, which is operating through a date. The Medo-Persian Empire, there's a date surrounding that empire. The Greeks, there's a date surrounding that empire. The Romans, there's a date surrounding that empire. Then after the Romans, it makes mention of another entity or government, a ruling body that will come into play after the Romans, because it is my understanding that the Romans came into play around 476. They came to an end around 476 AD. But Rome did continue, but we have now what we call the 10 toes. And the 10 toes now, its effect on Rome, which leads us, which I believe, to what we have today when we begin to look at the United Nations and things of that sort. I mean, what is actually governing the United States today? The United Nations, the 10 common markets. I mean, all of this stuff is, I believe, is very important, but it's coming from a prophetic timeline, I believe, that can be found in the book of Daniel 2, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Then after the 10 toes, it makes mention of another entity called the little horn. And that raises a lot of eyebrow with a whole bunch of folks here. Who is this little horn? Is the little horn Antiochus Epiphanes IV? Or is the little horn operating under two stages, where we have pagan Rome and then we have the papacy? And the only way that we can see the two phases of Rome with a pagan Rome and the papacy is when we begin to understand the 10 toes. What happened? Let me back up here a little bit. What happened in 476 AD? And then what happened during the time of the 10 toes? What happened during the time of the little horn? And what is going on when we look at the books of Daniel 7 and Daniel 8? Because Daniel 7 and 8 mirrors one another. And we'll talk about that at a little later time here. Now, it is my argument that Revelation, the 13th chapter, verse 11, which I know to be a fact, and I stand 10 toes down on this here, that Revelation, the 13th chapter, verse 11, I know, don't believe, I know to be America. And again, this is all following Bible prophecy and understanding where are we now in regards to the coming of the Mashiyach, a Mashiyach. So most importantly, Mishpachah, does America operate outside of a vacuum? Or is she, which is America, is she a extension of Rome? Once again, is America an extension of Rome? Me personally, I believe so. So let's try and answer these questions and so much more in our lesson entitled Ha-Teshuvah Shal Mashiyach, the return of the Mashiyach. What I would like to do first, Mishpachah, let's look at Revelation 13:11. We can start from verse 1. And if it would help a little bit, let's start with verse 1. All right? The book of Revelation, excuse me, the 13th chapter, verse 1. And I, Yahushua, the Revelator, who's on the island of Patmos, stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise out of the sea. Watch this now. This beast now had 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. In order to understand that, Mishpachah, we have to understand when Rome came into power in 168 AD, we see now the fall of Rome in 476 AD, and Rome fell, and I'm going to use that word real loosely. They were actually invaded by 10 Germanic tribes. Rome is still there, but they're operating differently now. And then after now, we see this invasion of these 10 barbaric tribes. We then have the conversation of a little horn and what that little horn does to 3 of the 10 horns. And you can find that now in the book of Daniel 7 and 8, and we'll talk about that at a later time. But I wanted to share with you, Mishpachah, is that in Revelation, the 13th chapter, where it says, and I, John, stood upon the sand of the sea and saw this beast rise up out of the sea. So location is very important. John the Revelator saw this beast come out of the sea. And that beast, which I saw, was likened to a leopard, which is the Greeks. And his feet was the feet of a bear, which is the Medo-Persian Empire. And his mouth was like the mouth of a lion, which is Babylon. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Now, what I'm arguing is that Rome encompassed everything that was before it 10 times to the max. So the Romans now, which is the hardest of metals in regards to gold, silver, brass, or bronze, and then you have the iron. The iron is the toughest and the strongest out of all of these metals because it encompassed everything that was before it. And I saw what if it says, as he was wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and the world wondered after the beast. We'll talk about that as we continue on with the lesson. And they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is likened to the beast, who was able to make war with him. Timing is very important. When did this event happen? Some say that this event has not happened yet. I am arguing the prophetic timeline that Daniel gave us. Meaning now is that I believe that a lot of this has already happened with more to come. And the way that I come to this conclusion is looking at what happened after the invasion of Rome. What happened? Looking at what did Constantine do when he moved the capital, that was in Rome to Istanbul, Turkey, where now we have an Eastern and Western Rome. History is going to be very important in helping us to understand a timeline in all of this. So let me just read on. And it was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemy, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months, which is 3.5 years. 42 months, which is 3.5 years. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against the sovereign, to blaspheme his name, one, and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. Literal heaven. Literal heaven. We need to understand who this is, following the prophetic timeline that was explained to Daniel by the messenger Gabriel. Verse 7, and it was given unto him to make war with the saints. And the saints are the ones that, these are the commandment keepers, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. All right. So I'm arguing that this is a religious leader that is operating under a universal religion called Catholicism. And I'm going to go into a whole lot more depth with this as we continue on with this series that I'm doing, that I have been doing for a long period of time. All right. So I pray that you guys have been following along with me. When I've been doing the Daniel series, I've been looking at the 1,260 years, the 490 years, the 2,300 evenings and mornings. I have been going over that with both feet. Extensive research with names and dates. So we're not going to be going through that today, but it's something that I want everyone to see in regards to Revelation, the 13th chapter, verse 11. We now are at verse 8. And all that dwells upon the earth shall worship. So this is a type of religion now. Shall worship him whose names were not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. We get into that a little bit later. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Verse 11, where it gets extremely interesting, which is basically the theme of today's class here this afternoon. And I, John the Revelator, beheld another beast. Outside of the beast that he saw in Revelation 13:1 that came out of the sea, we then have in Revelation 13:11, and I beheld another beast coming out of a different location, the earth. And we know that the word sea represents nations, people, kindreds, and tongues. All right. So we're talking about amongst a whole group of people is where this fourth beast comes out of here in Revelation 13:1. But we have in Revelation 13:11 another beast coming out another parcel of land called the earth. And he had two horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. So this beast here has two natures. We know that a lamb is a peaceable, quiet, calm animal. It can be led to the slaughter without any problems. But it makes mention now that this now lamb had two horns. It had two horns, and he spoke as a dragon. So we need to understand, when we begin to look at the nuances, okay, as described as possible in Revelation 13 and 11, what can we draw from this particular verse to help us understand this mystery passage? Because this lamb has a calm and gentle demeanor. It has two horns, meaning two natures, because it spoke like a dragon. Mishpachah, I have here in this slide here, slide number 4, we have what they're calling the forefathers who established the country back in around 1776, where they're drafting up rules, laws, legislation on how to govern the new world. All right. And I use that word new world very loosely because there was people already occupying this land and they were taking over. All right. We know them to be North American Indians, and a variety of different aborigines was actually living here. And we know that when these group of individuals came over here to this country here, that they broke every single treaty that they signed with the aborigines in this land here that we call America. So they spoke, or they had a gentle posture about themselves, but they spoke as a dragon, meaning that they spoke a bunch of lies. The same way that we see things being done today, where we have two horns, where there's a political system that is in play, where we have a Republican Party, we have a Democratical Party. So, and everybody is promising the best. But once they get into office, they speak as a dragon. Let's go ahead. Let's further on with this whole thing here. America is America in the Bible. Is Revelation, the 13th chapter, the 11th verse, this other beast, is it describing America? Once again, I say yes. But let's look at the Declaration of Independence. Let's look at it. The Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all, in the operative word now, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, right now, we should see a problem where we know that all men, according to the way legislation is ran, all men are not, or were not created equal according to the so-called forefathers that built this country. Because these men that were drafting up the Declaration of Independence, guess what? They had slaves. They had slaves. So the Declaration of Independence now did not include, all right, AKA Negroes. The Declaration of Independence had nothing to do with Negroes. It was brought to my attention in which I still believe, even back during the time of the early 90s, when I got started with all of this, the so-called Negro is 3/5 of a man. 3/5 of a man. So if he's 3/5 of a man, it would take now, what is that now? What, 2 other men or Negro men to be equivalent to 1 white man. So again, unalienable rights that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And remember, I'm stemming off of the scripture in Revelation, the 13th chapter, the 11th verse. The Lamb had 2 horns. 2 horns. And it spoke as a dragon. So we see now, when we go to the book of Daniel, 2, 7, and 8, we now see, and even if we wanted to go a little bit further, if we wanted to say Assyria, but the book of Daniel doesn't talk about Assyria particularly, but we have Assyria, we have the Babylonians, we have the Medo-Persian Empire, we have the Greeks, we have the Romans, we have the 10 toes, we have the little horn, and then we have, guess what, another horn that is mentioned in Revelation, the 13th chapter, verse 11. Let's move on. Here we have Mishpachar on Ellis Island. Now, I used to live in Jersey. Now, the Statue of Liberty, also known as Lady Liberty, sits closer to Jersey City. So those of us that lived in Jersey City or in Bayonne, you were actually able to see the Statue of Liberty or Lady Liberty. And what does all of this mean when we begin to look at what is going on at Ellis Island, when we see now the Statue of Liberty or Lady Liberty, where the history of this lady here goes back even during the time of the Babylonians by a goddess by the name of Iana. During the time of the golden era of Nebuchadnezzar, Iana was a prominent figure in religion. She was depicted as a woman riding the lion, because the lion has a saddle on his back, and the woman is riding Babylon, which is the golden empire or the head of gold in the book of Daniel. So this is the reason why I said, when reading the book of Revelation, the 13th chapter, that iron kingdom, which is Rome, and I believe America to be an extension of Rome, that Rome and also America, which is an extension of Rome again, encompassed the Greeks, the Medo-Persian Empire, and Babylon. So she is the worst of all of the kingdoms that came before her. Let's look into it. We have a whole lot, well, not too much more, but I want to make sure that I draw a picture here. What do we have on the Statue of Liberty? Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched, refuse of your teeming shore. Look at, again, Revelation 13 and 11, and I will read it. And I beheld another beast coming out of the earth and had 2 horns like a lamb. I've already shared with you the nature of a lamb, but be mindful that this lamb had two horns, showing the dual nature of the lamb because it also spoke like a dragon. So give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift up my lamp beside the golden door. Mishpachah, America is identified as that golden door, that golden city, the land of delight, the land where you can do whatever it is that you want to do. This is the land of opportunity, as they say. Now, let's even prove this further. Let's prove it further. Let's look at the Emma Lazarus, the new Colossus in 1883 as featured on the Statue of Liberty. Let's read it. The tablet that the Statue of Liberty is holding is inscribed on the tablet in Roman numerals. July the 4th, 1776, the date of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So I'm not making this up. When I showed the picture in slide number 4, the so-called forefathers, as they are now getting themselves ready to run the country in what we know to be the Declaration of Independence. Let's read this. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs, astride from land to land. Here at our sea wash sunset gates shall stand, a mighty woman. America is identified as the golden door, the mighty woman with a torch whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. See, this is where, let me check here for a minute to see if my sister Sharon is on the line here, because she goes in depth with a whole lot of stuff that I be going through, bringing us a better understanding on what is happening here. All right. Because I'm only touching the, the top layer in all of this. All right. Let me see something here. Give me 1 second. Okay, I can't see her on the line. So I'm going to go ahead with the rest of the video. One second, Mr. Scott. I really wanted to check something out right quick. Okay, here we are. Here we are. Okay, yes, hallelujah. My sister is here. And shalom to brother Byron Bull, America's Rome, Part 2. I definitely agree with you. Absolutely. My sister Sharon, she's on the line. And I'm sure that she's going to do her thorough investigation in elaborating on this new Colossus and the nature of the Statue of Liberty, the Lady of Liberty. So let me just read on here. She's also known on the Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand, the air-brighted harbor that twin cities frame, keep ancient lands your stored pomp. It has Ori's she with silent lips, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, the tempest, toss to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Now, this tablet with her sonnet to the Bartholdi statue of liberty engraved upon it is placed upon these walls in loving memory of Emma Lazarus, born in New York City, July the 22nd, 1849. She died in November the 1st, 1887. And one more thing I want to share with this here now is that there's also a bronze plaque with the Statue of Liberty pedestal inscribed with the new Colossus. It's a sonnet by American, once again, poet Emma Lazarus, and she wrote the poem again in 1883 to raise money for the construction of the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty. Now, the reason why I'm saying all of this again is to show what is going on. And especially when we begin to look at these messianic symbols that is actually happening within inside of the formation of this country here. Let's move on. What are we to make of these inscriptions on America's currencies? Is it a pure coincidence or something we should consider with Revelation 13 and 11? In God we trust, and on our coins we have in God we trust, and we talk about liberty, which now is describing what we see. Now, what we see in that inscription on the Statue of Liberty. Is it, again, pure coincidence? Or should we consider that there's something more to the puzzle that we need to consider? Okay, so Mishpachar, I have a quick 10-minute video that I'd like for you guys to take a look at and tell me what it is that you're able to get out of this now. This is the full evolution of the dollar bill from 1862 to now, around 2019, but we know now that the pictures of the money has changed. But I just want to share with you now what is actually happening here.
Hey everybody, Christian from Treasure Town here, and today we're going to be discussing the full evolution of the $1 bill. So basically, ever since 1862, the United States has been printing its own currency.
Mr. McCobb, please pay very close attention to this. There's a wealth of information in this video here, all right? A wealth of information.
And the $1 bill definitely could be the most iconic of these, and the form of the $1 bill has changed enormously over the year. There's 22 different switches and varieties that we're going to be talking about today in terms of the main ones that have been made. There's definitely more specific differences, but 22 is quite a lot, and we're not going to spend too much time on them, but I'm going to stop and talk a little bit about at least each one of them. So with that being said, let's just start with the 1862 $1 bill. This one was the original one, and it features Salmon P. Chase. So who is that? He was the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury under Lincoln, and he was during the Civil War. So the reason that the government actually started making it is before they were often issued regionally by banks, but instead in the times of the Civil War, the government needed to have its own currency system. So this is what we see here. The value on these is $150 to $1,500 or more. The upper range is definitely not the most that they can sell for, but the lower range is generally what you're going to pay for a pretty damaged note. And interestingly, the $1 bills are not overly expensive. In 1869, we see George Washington make his way onto the $1 bill, though he would not stay there permanently until much later. This one's actually a little bit more valuable. It's $250 at the minimum, and it is called a legal tender note as well. There will be some switches in that as we go along. also. And then in terms of some notes about this specific bill, this was often called a rainbow note, and that's also why it's a bit more expensive, because there was just a lot of color, as you can see, between the shades of green and the red. 1874, we see a similar design, but as you can see, there's changes. It's not as green, and this design would be continued in terms of the obverse in some respects through to the 1920s. Value on this is $100 minimum, $750 at the general upper range. Next up, we see a very similar one, just some minor switches. 1880, similar value, 150 to 750, and the notes on this one, there are some blue serial number varieties, and those are going to be worth about 4 times as much as a red serial number. The serial number, of course, is what you see as the identifier of what number bill it was made as. Moving on, we have what I believe is the first woman on a currency note in the United States. 1886, the Martha Washington note, valued at between $100 and $750. It's also the first silver certificate made, and basically they could be redeemed for $1 in silver coinage, so that kind of maybe cleared some issues up for those who didn't really trust the paper currency, because paper is very different from having a silver or a gold, some type of metal backing the currency. Now we don't have anything backing the currency, but back then that was kind of important, so these could be exchanged for $1 in silver coin. Now as we move along, we see 1890, we have Edwin Stanton appear. This is actually a more valuable note, $300 to $3,000, and this is a treasury note or a coin note, and it's the first ever treasury note made, and Edwin Stanton was the Secretary of War, I believe, during the Civil War, so that could be why he is pictured here. Also interesting of note, the $1 in coin, back then, most of these coins would have been silver as well. And as we keep going, in 1891, they also made it not too different, just the back is really significant, and the type is a treasury note, but it's also the last year treasury notes were made, so they didn't really stick around for too long. With that being said, though, we get a big switch and we go to the educational note. So it's George and Marcia Washington are on the back. And in terms of the design on the obverse, it is a woman, probably emblematic of liberty, right here, pointing to the Washington Monument. And it is a bill that's worth about $100 at the minimum and can really range up, but the educational notes were pretty significant in that they were designed to educate people. So there were famous names printed, as you can see in these wreaths here, and there was just a lot of history and artistic development kind of encapsulated in these notes. They're, again, highly unique, very dissimilar, I should say, from most other currency we've made in the States. In 1899, we switch to what are called Black Eagle notes. These are featuring a black eagle prominently. They also have Abraham Lincoln and Ulysses Grant. The value kind of starts to dip from this point on, though there are a couple exceptions, but this is probably $40 to $750. Year 1899, and it is a silver certificate. When I say look out for star notes, I know that these ones, so sometimes they would make an error and they'd have to use some replacement notes. They'd be denoted with a star, and on this series they can be a lot more valuable, but it's always a good idea to look out for some cool star notes. They still are made today. The next one, though, is 1917, and here's what I was saying before when I said that the design would carry over for a long time. These are not silver certificates, they're legal tender notes, but the value ranges between $20 and $200. They have George Washington on them, and they're often called a sawhorse note. The next one we call Flying Eagle notes because of the back, but there were tons of different varieties of these made. They're 1918 George Washington $1 bills. They're called Federal Reserve Banknotes, FRBNs, and the value is $20 to $300. But the different Federal Reserve banks could make them, so they weren't all San Francisco. I'm sure that there were ones like Philadelphia or New York, but I actually haven't seen them, so I can't say that with 100% certainty, but this is some cool national currency. And in terms of the 1923 $1 bill, here we have George Washington as always. The value on this is going to be $20 to $100. Similarly, it's going to be a silver certificate, and it's the last large-size silver certificate. It's often referred to as a horse blanket because the note was simply so large. Other notes have been referred to horse blankets, but it will significantly decrease in size as we move to our next one, which is going to be in the 1928 range, though there was a more valuable non-silver certificate. So the type was a legal tender United States note, and that was one of the last large-size legal tender notes. And again, 75 to 500 or more dollars is a big difference. The main differentiator being that one of them was a silver certificate, the other was a legal tender note. Moving on, we have some small size silver certificates. These are the first one. The 1928 was called a funny back because the back is just kind of interesting and a lot different from what we have today. Was a silver certificate, and the value again starts to decrease about $7.50 to $50. And then as we continue to move, we have first off though, a legal tender, one that's a lot more valuable, $75 to $400, with that red seal instead of the blue silver certificate one. And that was going to be the last $1 red seal. But then we get a 1934, which is even a little bit less valuable, very similar to before, also a funny back. $5 to $40 is the range here. Then we get what are a lot more common in 1935. $1 bill does not have a funny back, very similar to what we see today, and the value is probably $1.50 to $25. Though you should look for Hawaii's and North Africa's, and I'll get to those in a second. So first is a North African here, also 1935, but the value is a lot more, $20 to $125. And basically, they were made for forces in Europe and North Africa who were fighting during World War II. But the thing is, if they would get captured, then all of the North African currency would be rendered valueless, basically. So they had a good measure of insurance in case they got overtaken. They'd just cancel this currency. But now it's rare and worth a lot more than the regular. Similarly, they had the same thing going on in Hawaii. In case Hawaii was captured by Japan, they could say everything that had the Hawaii on it was now valueless. So that would prevent Hawaii being financially, if Japan took it, they couldn't get all of the U.S. currency and start using that. These are also valued between $20 and $100. Finally, in 1957, they had the last series year for silver certificates. Again, they're only $1.50 to $10 or so, but they're still fun. And then today is the 1963 and on note. It features George Washington. It's about $1, though there are some special things that potentially make it more valuable, like bar notes, web notes, star notes, birthday notes, and there's a lot more out there, but there's some cool serial numbers that will make them worth more occasionally. But they're always fun to search for. I actually search for them a lot on some other videos of mine, but I hope that you enjoyed. There's really a ton of history located within these $1 bills, and the different designs are really cool to see the evolution of. So that being said, I hope that you enjoyed the video and that you got a lot out of it. Thanks for watching the video. I'd encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe to help me out with my channel. And if you want to connect more, I do so on my Facebook, Treasure Town, my website, treasuretownyt.com.
Okay, Mr. Picard, I pray that you got a chance to watch the video. I don't own the rights to that video. Let me just say that. It was for educational purposes only. No monetary gain is being received off of that video that I just showed. Now, but I did find it very interesting is because you begin to look at the Messianic symbols behind each one of these dollar bills, how they go from its value in gold to silver. Looking at, again, the Messianic symbols behind all of this and the demonic symbolism, conjuring. All of this plays a very important role because, once again, I do believe that this is Babylon. Me personally, according to scripture, now I have enough scriptures to prove that we are still in Babylon. Babylon did not come to an end at the death or resurrection of the Mashiyach. Babylon is still in operation. We are still operating under a demonic system we saw maybe about a year ago where we began to look at these Messianic symbols and understand that we're still living in this demonic Babylonian system, that they actually lit up the White House in LGBTQ colors. So this walk is real, and we don't want to be oblivious to what is going on around us. Like, take for example, when we saw, I forgot at what minute it was, but there was a woman with her arms around a bare-chested boy with something around his loins, and she was pointing towards the White House, but also in that direction. Mishpachah noticed that there was a obelisk also standing there, which is Babylonian in origin. Also take notice now, Mishpachah, with these monies and the symbols, it is describing how America gets her power, which is from the left-hand side. Also take notice too, Mishpachah, these symbols mean something. And at some point, maybe I'll go into depth in studying the differences in the monies and their Messianic meanings. But always pay very close attention to the American eagle and the direction of his head. When the eagle's head is pointed towards the olive branch, we're living in a time of peace. Because remember now, the eagle is described as on one of its legs or its claws is holding an olive branch, and in the other leg is holding arrows. So when the eagle now is pointing towards the olive branch, once again, we're living in a time of peace. And when the eagle's head now is pointing towards the arrows, means that we're living during a time of possible war, or we're about to engage in war. And what I'll do is the next time I do a class, and the classes will be more frequent after next week. Okay, after next week, the classes will be more frequent. Donald Trump gave a press conference where the eagle's head was not pointed towards the olive branch, but it was pointed towards the arrows. We are living in a time of war. Now, let's continue on because we got about 15, 20 minutes and we'll be done. The Great Mountain, or what we call now in Hebrew, Har HaGadol. Har HaGadol, the Great Mountain. Why is this important? Because we're still talking about what is going on in the book of Daniel, the 2nd chapter, the 7th chapter, 8 and 9, because we need to understand the time that we're living in. Is there an expectancy now of a Mashiyach in the near future or the distant future? And I'm arguing that it is centered around the last and longest prophecy in the Bible, which is 2,300 evenings and mornings, which is mentioned in the book of Daniel, the 8th chapter, verses 13 and 14, because it says now at the end of the 2,300 evenings and mornings, which I'm subscribing, and I'll go into detail with a little bit later, that is actually talking about 2,300 evenings and mornings, which is 2,300 years, then the sanctuary will be cleansed. And we'll talk about that. Now, let's look at Har HaGadol. The Messiah is called the Great Mountain, or the Great Mountain, because the Mashiyach towers above the patriarchs. The Mashiyach is greater than Moses and is above the ministering angels. As Isaiah says in 52 and 10, Behold, my servant, which I believe to be the Mashiyach, shall deal prudently. He shall be exalted, which is the Mashiyach. He shall be exalted and extolled and be very high. And we can see also some information on this now in the Midrash and Tekuma Toldo, which is just reading the generation. So anybody was interested in reading that, I have the slide here. Just read the Midrash and see what you're able to gather out of all of this. Let's also look at the book of Zechariah 4 and 7. All right. The book of Zechariah 4 and 7. Let me pull that up right quick. All right. Let's pull that up. Zechariah 4 and 7. Here we are. Zechariah 4 and 7. Who are thou, O great mountain? Which is a question. Who are you, or who art thou, O great mountain? Before Zerubbabel, thou shalt become a plain, and he shall bring forth the headstone thereof with shoutings, saying, Grace, grace unto it. Let me read down just a little bit more. Moreover, the sovereign of the Lord, or the word of the sovereign came unto me, saying, The hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this house. His hand shall also finish it, and thou shalt know that the sovereign of hosts have sent me unto you. Read down just a little bit more. For who have despised the day of small things? For they shall rejoice, they shall see the plummet in the hand of Zerubbabel with those 7. They are the eyes of the sovereign, which run to and fro through the whole earth. Then answered I and said unto him, What are these 2 olive trees upon the right side of the candlestick, and upon the left side thereof? And I answered again and said unto him, What be these 2 olive branches, which through the 2 golden pipes empty the golden oil out of themselves? And he answered me and said, Knowest thou not what these be? And I said, No, my sovereign. Then said he, These are the 2 anointed ones that stand by the sovereign of the whole earth. Now, we do know this, that when you go into the holy place, to the far left-hand side, what do you see? You see the golden menorah. Okay, the 7 cups, the 7 bowls, and this is a continual burning before the Father. We know that these 7 bowls represent a lot of things. It represents the Mashiyach, because the Mashiyach stands in the midst of the golden candlestick, the nar, the menorah. We also know that it also represents now the 7 festivals. It also goes into teachings now where we begin to look at the 7 festivals. It begins to talk about the 7 days of creation. So there's a greater and higher understanding in all of this. And the only thing that I'm trying to share here now is that where does the Mashiyach play in all of this, not excluding what Zerubbabel is doing, but this is centered around priestly services. Once again, priestly services, and we'll talk about at another time, where the Mashiyach now plays this high priest in the temple, but not the temple that was destroyed in 70 AD. Not that temple. We're talking about a heavenly temple where the Mashiyach now is actually playing his role in, because that temple now that Moses was told to build was an example of a heavenly temple that was supposed to now be displayed here on earth, showing us now that the temple in heaven was supposed to have been a mirror of righteousness that was going on here on the planet Earth. Now, I also want to bring something to the Mishpachah's attention is Daniel, the 2nd chapter, verses 34, 35. Daniel, the 2nd chapter, 34, 35. We're almost done here. 2:34:35. 2:34:35. Here we are. Let's read at 31 to 35. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image head was of fine gold, which is Babylon, his breast and his arms of silver, which is the Medo-Persian Empire, and his belly and thighs of brass, which is the Greeks, his legs of iron, okay, which is Rome, his feet, then after Rome, his feet part of iron and part of clay, all right? So after the legs of iron, we see now Rome goes through another era where we're talking about the 10 toes of iron and part of clay. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Now watch this now, this stone here. Verse 35, then was the iron, which is Rome, the clay, the brass, which is the Greeks, the silver, which is the Medo-Persian Empire, and the gold, which is Babylon, broken to pieces together and became like the shaft of the summing threshing floor. And the wind carried them, which is Babylon, because the whole colossal figure is Babylon. The whole colossal figure is Babylon. But it makes mention now, once again, in verse 35, it says, then the pieces together became like the shaft of the summing threshing floor, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them, which are these Babylonian empires. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, as we described in the book of Isaiah 52:10. And that great mountain was the servant, which is Yahushua Mashiyach. That stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. The whole earth. My argument is that has not happened yet. Again, that has not happened yet. So when we begin to look at typologies, prophetic shadow pictures, if we clearly understood those things, it should give us a better understanding on how to read the Brit Chadasha, also known as the New Testament. Now, let's read the book of Yochanan 14:3, and let's examine the text very closely. The Mashiyach says, if I go, and the word I is a personal pronoun. If I go and prepare a place for you, I, personal pronoun, I will come again. I will come again. Not through my argument, the Romans who destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD. But the way that he came to his Talmudim during the 1st century and looking at, in as much detail as possible, it says, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. You may be also. So the next thing I wanted to do is to look at this word you. Y-O-U. Some are arguing that, well, Kasad, the word you is only pertaining to those individuals of the first century. It has no bearing, and it is not talking about those of us today. Let's see whether or not that is true. In Hebrew, the term you addressed to a singular or plural you can be expressed using the perfect and imperfect tense. So there is a way to read Hebrew. Perfect tense and imperfect tense. Now, depending on the context and the specific pronoun and verb being used, the call stem perfect tense means complete action. Complete action. So at the time of us reading now, if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. Is that now being said in the perfect tense or in the imperfect tense? And obviously, that is being said in the imperfect tense, meaning that it has not happened yet. Because if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again, which means future. And if it's future, that means that it's in the imperfect tense and not perfect tense, because the perfect tense will describe to us that it happened at that particular point in time. Let's read on. Now, the called perfect tense is a complete action, and the yiktol is an imperfect, which means in the future. Conjugation are the main forms used to express different aspects of the word you in Hebrew. Here's more detailed explanation. In the call stem perfect complete action tense, this tense is used to describe actions that are completed or have been completed before a given point in time. It can be translated into English as the simple past tense or past present tense. And then we have the yiktol, imperfect future. So we're talking about in John 14:3 is the imperfect future. This conjugation is more complex and can be used to express a variety of meanings, including future action. The imperfect is often used to describe future actions, ongoing or continuous action. It can also be used to describe actions that are ongoing or continuous in the present. Habitual action. The imperfect can be used to describe actions that are habitual performed. And potential action, it can be used to describe actions that are potential or hypothetical. So all of these things have to be analyzed in order for us now to get the best understanding of what's going on in John 14:3. And my argument is that when you see the word you being used here in John 14:3, it is being used in the call stem in perfect tense, meaning now that this is something to happen in the future and that it is not in this perfect tense form. Okay, that's my argument. We have some more here. The pronoun usage. The correct Hebrew pronoun and verb conjugation will depend on the specific context, including the gender, number, and person of the you being addressed. For example, if you say you did it, in Hebrew, you might use the perfect tense, which would indicate a complete action, which is common sense. If you were to say you will do it, in Hebrew, you might use the imperfect tense, which would indicate a future action. In essence, The you in Hebrew can be expressed using either the perfect tense for completed actions or the imperfect tense for future ongoing habitual or potential actions, depending on the context of the sentence. So, once again, Mishpachah, for the Son of Man will come in perfect tense, will come in the glory of his Father with his messengers. And then will he reward each according to his works. And that is in the book of Matthew 16:27. And it also states in the book of Jude that the Most High, the Father now, when he sends the Mashiyach, he will come back with 10,000 times thousands of angels coming along with him. Also, Mishpachah, in ending, making sure that we keep an eye on what is going on around us. We have the super rich building doomsday bunkers, preparing for what they're calling the end times. So, Mishpachah, while the mass majority, I believe, of our people are surrounded around what is the new dance out, what is the new type of clothing, what is the newest car, what is the newest jewelry that is out, while our people are being preoccupied with those things, I am still arguing the fact that the higher-ups, when I say the higher-ups, the puppets that are controlling the world today, Babylon, know that we are on the verge of something major that's about to happen. I am a strong advocate of preparing for what I believe something to happen in the very near future. We see what is happening with Donald Trump, where we have this war going on between America and China with these tariffs, with the importing and exporting of goods. Don't turn a blind eye to that. Once again, don't turn a blind eye to that, Mishpachah. We are on the verge, once again, of something major about to happen. And it is my argument that the virus has spread it so bad throughout the Bible, throughout the human body. When I say the human body, I mean the body of the Mashiyach, that it would take a doctor to come and heal the nation. All right. And so with that, Mishpachah, I pray that you were able to get something out of today's presentation. I pray that the Father continue to bless each and every one of you. I truly do. And once again, I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I pray that the Father continue to bless each and every one of you. And until the next time, Mishpachah, I'm going to say shalom, shalom. May the Father continue to bless you and keep you strong. Take care.